Our next guest is the future commissioner of college football. He's the host of the Josh Pate Show. He's taking over little by little. It's Josh Pate's world, and the rest of us are just living it. And he's kind enough to join us on the Loud Security Systems Newsmaker line. Josh, how are you?
I'm just looking at my phone every 13 seconds to see who's losing a job, who's rumored here, allegedly how small the hiring pool is. Just a lot of information out there these days.
That's good for the future commissioner. It's a lot to chew on if you're Josh Pate. So before we get to the coaching stuff, because there's a lot of it, I'm going to put you on the spot. Give me the SEC teams that you are so confident with you're going to put the Josh Pate reputation on the line that are making the playoff.
Oh, buddy. I like A&M. Now, if they don't make it, what happens to me? I mean, do I die? Do I retire? What happens?
Well, you lose your commissioner's pension.
You lose the commissioner's pension, and we'll talk about what kind of form of corporate punishment, or so there'll be some kind of repercussion. It's painful.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will put A&M in there. I'll put Alabama in there. I feel really good about Ole Miss. Those are three. I want to say Georgia, but again, given the stakes here, I would prefer to see them get through this Saturday at least before I start mentioning Georgia, because they're playing them and Alabama both just one-possession machines, one-possession games every week. So I like Bama. I like Ole Miss. I like A&M. That's where I'm drawing the line right now. And we'll revisit this as time allows.
Tell me what you see in Oxford on defense, because I don't think I see a bad defense. Like, remember a couple of years ago when they gave up, it was all but 7 possible yards to Alabama one night? Like, that's not what this is. I think I see good players who aren't finding it yet. Like, they're trying to break through, and they still may, and they may have this weekend. Tell me what you see with the Rebels on defense.
I remember talking to you about that. That was some crazy stuff, breaking down that. It was Bama Ole Miss box score. And I had never even spoken like that before. Like, thinking, what are the total amount of yards given the plays that were run that could have been gained? And
Yep.
Bama almost got every possible yard. It's crazy. So what I think is important to note about them is as their reputation is portal heavy, portal this, portal that, which is well earned and it's accurate, it just so happens those guys in that defensive front, a lot of them are homegrown. They were recruited there out of high school. They've been developed there. And I think it's paid dividends for them. They, like you said, they've been a lot more opportunistic than, a blanket. There aren't many of those defenses around right now in the league. But what I do like overall is just the athletic profile. When I know that I don't have to shut someone out, when I know I've got a complementary offense that I can rely on to score 30 if I need it, I love the risk. I love the chances you can take defensively when you have that kind of athletic profile. I think Pete feels that way when he calls a game over there defensively. Now, I don't know what their best is. I don't know what their ceiling is. I just think as a team, the Kentucky game this year, just like last year, is the hinge point for them. Last year they lost it. They had no breathing room down the stretch. This year they went up there early in the season. Close game that they got to win, and that's given them breathing room now to where, they can afford to lose another game and still be in this thing.
Josh Pate, the future commissioner of college football, is with Chuck and Chernoff on the Loud Security Systems Newsmaker line. I'm going to make you choose one. Is it the amount of media attention or the fact that we're playing Pro Football 2.0 that coaches are losing their jobs much quicker than they used to?
I think it's the 2.0 NFL thing. I think it's the lack of recalibrating expectations along with that, more so than media attention. Maybe media attention plays into it, but I think we're in a world where 9-3 is still used pejoratively. Man, you're a 9-3 team. That used to be an insult to the top 5, top 10 programs. And we live in a world now where, first off, 9-3 may make you a playoff team, but also look at how thin the margins are. We just mentioned Bama, or we mentioned Georgia. I went down Georgia's schedule last night, so I got it fresh in my head. That's a missed field goal by Tennessee away from being a loss. That's Auburn completely imploding in the second half away from being a loss. You got that game this weekend. One play changes there. That could be a loss. Georgia could be an 8-4 team. They could be an 11-1 team. And there's not much difference between the two. It's not a bunch of 42-10 games. Well, the reason I say that is I think we're still in a world, especially since the salaries have only gotten bigger for the coaches. You're still in a world where people have this warped idea that even though the rosters are thinner, and even though the root system of the rosters isn't nearly as deep as it used to be, and even though you're going to expand to 9-game schedules in league play, even though all that's going to change, we can still reasonably expect 10-2 to be the floor. And if we don't get that, then that means our head guy's not doing enough. And since we're paying him $13-14 million, which is about to happen this cycle for several guys, since we're paying him that much, it's reasonable to expect that. And I know, Chuck, I've talked to you like 5 times about this. It doesn't matter if you pay a guy $14 billion a year. What's realistic and what's possible doesn't change. The expectations get warped, and that changes, but the reality of the thing doesn't change. And so I think the 2.0 NFL location and also the lack of recalibrating expectations to account for the modern landscape is what's yielding a lot of this.
Alabama, everybody has, I believe, correctly taken notice of one of the teams that has evolved more than anybody else since week 1. LSU, Oklahoma, Eastern Illinois, Auburn, 2 of those teams don't have coaches. This really looks doable for Alabama. Are they as good as we are all suspecting?
Yeah, but they're not dominant. So speaking of recalibrating, if you've recalibrated how you think about Alabama, how you talk about them, yeah, they're every bit as good. But when I say they're good, I mean they are a brilliant Saturday staff with good enough players. That's what they are. That is critical in every hire that's being made now, by the way. If you're going to have good enough NIL resources, you got to think we're going to have a comparable roster. You're not going to give yourselves the huge edges talent-wise that Saban had a decade ago. No one's ever going to do that again. But if we've got a comparable roster, let's just say we got a top 10 roster, our players are going to be good enough. At that point, it's about development, it's about staying healthy, and it's about giving ourselves an edge on Saturday. And I think Alabama's coaching staff right now is as good as anyone in the league, maybe in the country, at giving themselves an edge on Saturday. So a lot of these one-possession games, people look at them and, oh, man, they're just sneaking by. What you may be seeing is an Alabama roster that, with a lesser Saturday staff, would be sitting there turning in 7-5 or 8-4. But it's masked because those guys are so good. Ryan Grubb, especially, so good. Such a huge addition to that coaching staff this past offseason. That's where I think they level up. And that means every single game's winnable. Every single game's going to come down to the wire. But Kalen DeBoer's one-possession record is insane. So it's not an accident. They just keep winding up on the right side of those one-possession games.
Josh Pate with Chuck and Chernoff on the Loud Security Systems Newsmaker line. Who's winning the Lane Kiffin sweepstakes? And give me the handicap on Ole Miss as a part of it.
So because I don't really know where he would lean LSU, Florida, I am going to lean Ole Miss at the moment. Because I think if you split the two, then Ole Miss has the better odds. I've been of this opinion for a little while. I think there's a big difference in theoreticals at 50,000 feet versus there is a piece of paper in front of you. Here's the pen. It's time to make a decision. Because one of those, your mind can wander. You can daydream and think about all this and that, just purely hypothetical land. When there's an offer in front of you and it's time to be an adult and it's time to weigh all the pros and the cons and it's time to move your family and it's time to tell staffers you're going and it's time to basically rewrite your legacy as it's in the middle of being written, that's when you find out where your heart is. And it would not surprise me at all if we're sitting here, early November, if Lane still didn't fully know. And you don't have to know yet because you're not going to make a decision until your season's over and he may go to the playoffs. So, look, there may have been indications given. There are tea leaves being read. I don't even think he fully knows yet. So until I hear otherwise, I'll be maybe in the slight minority. I'll lean that he stays in Oxford.
We have talked that D.C. and Athens, it's a gateway to being a head coach, and pretty soon for people. Mel got hired away. Dan Lanning got hired away. Fran Brown got hired, and he went in D.C. I didn't think Glenn Schumann was on that fast track. Is just the gargantuan number of power conference teams looking for coaches, is Glenn Schumann a candidate to get plucked away?
It depends on who you ask, but I've had enough people who I trust tell me yes, that my answer is yes. I refuse to bother these guys about this stuff during the season, so I never get firsthand knowledge of this, but enough people do that I'll just talk to them. I think what it comes down to is who's making the hire. Obviously, that's always what it comes down to. But then when it comes to the person or the people making the hire, what's their lens? Because some people have a lens and many of them use the same lens, and they always just kind of incestuously wind up with these same 5 or 6 candidates on the same list. And it's usually the ones who end up looking for another coach the 3 years after that. But there are others who use I'm not going to call it a right set of parameters, but a different set of parameters. And the boxes they're trying to check, the criteria they're trying to meet, those may have you look at Glenn Schumann and say, you know what? Maybe professional development, something we're going to bake in here. Oregon did that. Oregon did it with Lanning. It always baffles me when people say we've got to have someone with head coaching experience. Like, well, Georgia didn't require it with Kirby. Ohio State didn't require it with Day. Oregon didn't require it. They look like they're doing pretty good. Why do you box yourself in like that? Why do you automatically shrink the candidate pool? Now, what you do have to do, if you do find a coordinator that has all the right stuff, according to how you define the right stuff, you do have to bake in this idea. There's a little bit of professional development that's going to have to happen on our dime. Dan Lanning versus Dan Lanning versus Kalen DeBoer was a mismatch first few times he went through that. Well, you get better when you go through that kind of stuff. And so Oregon's reaping the rewards of that now. I wonder if anyone's ready to make that investment who has a job opening on Schumann. I would think that he may have an opportunity or two on his desk that he may have to decide on or turn down in the next month or so.
Josh, I want to get a kind of a national perspective on Georgia Tech and specifically Haynes King's situation. I said to Chuck earlier, what happened Saturday night, I mean, obviously it's a bad loss, but what Haynes did for 511 yards, 4 touchdowns, 103 on the ground, 400 in the air. I compared it to Joe Hamilton in 99. He finished second in the Heisman Trophy. They lost in Florida State. They couldn't get a stop, but Joe Ham did everything he could. How much is that win, or how much does that loss hurt him, or do people account for the fact that he did everything he could, had that day, and it still puts him very much in the discussion?
People who know what to do with their vote will respect it. Not everyone who has a vote on that award knows what to do with it. I had someone sum it up to me good the other day. This was before last Saturday, by the way. And they said, Haynes King is having the year Diego Pavia thinks he's having. And I stopped and I thought about it. And I mean, I'm watching all the Georgia Tech games, so you don't have to sell me on Haynes King. But I said, you know what? That is a really great way to put it, to the point where if I were a really, really rogue, just didn't care member of the Georgia Tech SID contingent, I'd probably socialize that quote a little bit, because it really rung true. Then he did what he did Saturday. And, I mean, you guys know as well as I do, a lot of these folks aren't watching that game. They're just seeing the box score, and they see Georgia Tech lost, and they don't really care how. But if anyone watched it, or just go look at the box score. If you're lying about watching the game, just go look at the box score. It's one of the more insane box scores, and yet it's one of like 5 or 6 of those efforts that you've had this year from him already. I don't really care what anyone else says. Some people think you have to be a playoff team to be a Heisman candidate. I've never seen that in the definition of the trophy, so I don't think that. I would challenge anyone. Ohio State, Indiana, I don't care. Find anyone who's more impactful and important to their team this year than he has been. I don't think you'll come back to me with something that changes my mind on the fact that Haynes King is that.
So John Calipari is a little different, and he told Kentucky, "Keep your $30 million. I'm just going to quit. I don't want to be here anymore." I don't know that Mark Stoops is going to do that, but could Mark Stoops do that? Is there a chance that Mark Stoops becomes another SEC head coach who just who's no longer there, but this time it's of his choice?
I don't have a really good read on that. I was talking to a Kentucky buddy of mine about that last week, and they all say it, but you can tell they're kind of trying to wish cast it into it. Like a lot of us kids who grew up in South Georgia, we never got to see snow, so we were trying to wish cast snow. Kentucky fans are kind of trying to wish cast Mark Stoops just having this benevolent heart and saying, you guys spend that money elsewhere. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. But I also think there was this dream for a while up there that they had John Summerall in the on-deck circle down at Tulane. And John Summerall's profile has gotten much too big for Kentucky folks to realistically think they're going to land him.
They wouldn't finish third for him right now.
Yeah, I know. And I think they know that too. I don't think there's a lot of delusion left there. So I'm not sure where they would go. But, to go back to the Schumann thing, here's what's really interesting. Kentucky job, if it's on the table for a Glenn Schumann, in this day and age, I don't know that Glenn takes that. I don't know that those guys look at that caliber of job these days and say, I got to get my foot in the door no matter what. I really think you just as soon stay put another year as a major coordinator than put yourself at a guaranteed disadvantaged spot in the most competitive and deepest league in the country.
Pate, I'm going to say this. After that appearance, I am officially endorsing you as the future commissioner. I mean, I'd heard all the talk and a lot of the hype, and I thought it was a lot of, just like self-promotion, but I really, now you have my endorsement.
I mean, look, it probably is mostly hype. We just happened to hit a streak here today where I'm walking around this park in Nashville. There's no distraction. It's like 65 degrees out here. So, look, I'm glad that we set a good benchmark, but it only goes downhill from here. Chuck will tell you, it only goes downhill from here.
No, Matt and I want to be at the 10 top when you get introduced as commissioner. We want to be at that front 10 top, all right?
And I'll even wear, listen, Pate, I'll even wear one of those tight white T-shirts to make you feel more comfortable.
Sold.
Right.
Sold. 3 chairs, 4 chairs. You guys just let me know whatever you need. I'll make it happen.
That's the power of the future commissioner of college football. Josh, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for the time.
I appreciate it, guys.